Before the city wakes, before carts begin to roll over packed streets and shop doors creak open, there's a quiet moment when New York in the 1700s feels almost still. The harbor rests under a pale gray-blue sky. Masts rise like dark lines against the soft light, sails furled and unmoving. The water barely stirs, carrying faint reflections of warehouses, wooden piers, and clustered buildings that stand close together, as if sharing warmth through the night. The city has not yet found its voice for the day. This is New York, before noise, before urgency. A city that breathes slowly. If calm journeys into early American life help you relax and fall asleep, take a moment now to subscribe, like this video, and leave a quiet comment. You are listening to Stories of America, where history unfolds gently, one peaceful night at a time. You are inside a modest home near the lower part of the city, where streets are narrow and buildings lean toward one another. Thick wooden walls hold the coolness of the night. A small window lets in the faintest light from outside, just enough to soften the darkness of the room. A heavy wool blanket rests over you, its weight familiar and reassuring. You wake slowly, not because of sound, but because the day itself has arrived. Somewhere far off, a gull calls once over the harbor, then silence returns. The wooden floors cool beneath your feet as you rise. The boards respond with a low, gentle creak, a sound shaped by years of mornings like this. Near the hearth, gray ash lies quiet, holding the memory of warmth from the night before. You kneel and brush it aside carefully. Beneath, a small ember still glows, steady and patient. You place thin pieces of wood around it, guiding them into place. A spark follows. The fire begins to wake, slowly, without hurry. As the light grows, the room takes shape. A simple table worn smooth by use, shelves holding clay bowls and tin cups. A coat hanging near the door, heavy and practical. Everything here is plain, familiar, and trusted. Outside, the sky lightens over the harbor. The smell of salt and damp wood drifts faintly through the window. Somewhere along the docks, a rope shifts against a mast, then settles again. This is how the day begins in New York City in the 1700s. Quietly, gently, before the city remembers how busy it can be. And you step into the morning slowly, ready to live one calm day in a place that is still learning how to grow. The fire settles into a soft, steady glow, offering warmth without demanding attention. You remain near the hearth for a moment, hands open to the heat, watching the small movements of light as they travel across the stone and the rough wooden walls. An iron kettle rests nearby, darkened from years of use. You lift it carefully, feeling its solid weight, and fill it with water kept overnight. When you set it close to the fire, it waits patiently, warming in its own time. You move to the small window and ease it open just a little. Cool morning air slips inside, carrying the faint scent of salt from the harbor, mixed with damp wood and rope. Outside, the street below is quiet. The narrow lane holds only shadow and pale light, its stones dark from the night. From somewhere down toward the docks, a distant sound reaches you. The low splash of water against a pier, the soft knock of wood touching wood as a boat shifts slightly in its mooring. These sounds are not loud. They feel like the city breathing in its sleep. You step back and dress slowly, pulling on simple garments made for work and weather. The fabric is worn but clean, shaped by years of use. Each piece settles against you with familiarity, as if it knows exactly where it belongs. When you open the door, the hallway beyond is dim and still. You step outside, closing the door gently behind you. The street greets you with quiet stone and timber. Buildings rise close on either side, their upper stories leaning inward slightly, narrowing the view of the sky above. You walk toward the end of the lane at an easy pace. Your footsteps sound soft against the stones, unhurried. A cat slips along the edge of a doorway and disappears again into shadow. Somewhere above, a window creaks as someone shifts inside. As you reach a corner, the harbor comes into view. The water lies calm, broken only by the shapes of moored ships and the reflections of masts stretching into the pale light. Sailcloth hangs slack. No voices carry yet. The day has not fully claimed the city. You stand for a moment and watch the light change on the water. The kettle back inside will soon begin to whisper. The fire will hold. The morning will open itself slowly. New York remains quiet, and you remain within its calm, moving forward without hurry as the day begins to take shape. You return inside as the harbor light grows a little stronger, closing the door softly behind you. The warmth from the hearth meets you again, gentle and steady. The kettle has begun to murmur now, not boiling, only whispering, as if speaking quietly to the room. You pour ground coffee into a small pot, the scent rising rich and dark, cutting gently through the cool morning air. A piece of bread is set near the fire to warm, its surface catching a faint glow. You sit at the table and wrap your hands around a tin cup, letting the warmth seep slowly into your fingers. Light finds its way farther into the room. It settles on the tabletop, revealing shallow marks left by years of use. Dust floats in the air, turning lazily in the beam, untroubled by time. You take a slow sip. The warmth spreads, grounding you, steadying the morning. Outside, the city remains subdued. A single footstep passes along the street below, then fades. Somewhere near the docks, a rope is pulled and released with a soft sound. A gull calls once. Then the harbor answers with silence. When the cup is empty, you rinse it carefully and set it upside down to dry. The sound is small and final. You take a cloth and wipe the table once, folding it neatly and returning it to its place. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is left unsettled. You step out again, this time walking toward the water. The street opens slightly as it nears the docks. Wooden planks replace stone underfoot. Barrels rest along the edges, their surfaces rough and salt-stained. The air smells stronger here, filled with brine, tar, and damp wood. Ships sit quietly in the harbor, tall and still. Their masts rise into the brightening sky. Lines slack, sails tied and waiting. A man stands on a pier farther down, moving slowly, checking a rope with calm familiarity. No words are exchanged. The morning does not need them. You pause at the edge of the pier and look out across the water. The surface moves gently, catching light in small ripples. The city behind you is waking, but carefully, as if mindful of the quiet it is leaving behind. The day continues to open and you move with it, calm and unhurried, ready for the steady hours that lie ahead in this growing city by the sea. The harbor air feels cool against your face, fresh with salt and dampness. You let it fill your lungs slowly, then breathe out just as slowly. The pier beneath your boots is worn smooth in places, rough in others, shaped by years of footsteps and shifting barrels. When you walk, the wood answers with soft creaks, never sharp, only familiar. A few early movements begin to appear along the docks. Not bustle, only the first quiet signs of work. A man lifts a crate carefully and sets it down with a dull thud. Another checks a coil of rope, guiding it into order with steady hands. A small boat rocks gently at its tie, the water tapping quietly against its side. You move along the edge of the pier at an easy pace, looking without staring, noticing without hurry. The ships are close enough now that you can see the texture of their hulls, the dark tar lines between planks, the thick ropes hanging in loose curves. The smell of tar and hemp is strong here, mixed with fish and seaweed and the cold breath of the water. As you turn back toward the street, the city begins to show more life. A shutter opens above a doorway. A woman steps out with a bucket, pausing as if to feel the morning before moving on. A cart stands ready near a warehouse, its wheels still, the horse beside it calm and patient. You walk up the narrow lane again, away from the water. The buildings stand close, their wooden faces weathered, paint faded or absent, each one marked by years of wind and salt. The street is quiet enough that you can hear your own footsteps, and the occasional soft sound of a distant voice starting somewhere out of sight. Back at home, you lift a broom and sweep the floor slowly, gathering dust and small bits of ash into a neat pile. The motion is steady and soothing. You open the door and sweep the gathered dirt outside, letting it disappear into the street. The morning light has grown warmer now. It falls into the room and softens the edges of everything. You prepare a small, simple meal, nothing elaborate. Bread, perhaps a bit of something salted or preserved. You eat slowly, letting the quiet remain intact. When you are finished, you rinse what needs rinsing and set everything back where it belongs. The room feels settled again, ready for the day's work, whatever form it takes. Outside, New York in the 1700s continues to wake, one calm movement at a time, and you step forward into it with the same unhurried pace, letting the city's slow rhythm guide you onward. The street outside is brighter now, the sky visible in narrow strips between the leaning lines of buildings. Sunlight touches the upper stories first, warming shutters and window frames, then slowly works its way down to the street, where it gathers in soft patches on stone and packed earth. You walk along the lane at an easy pace, passing doorways that are beginning to open. Some are still closed, holding onto the last quiet of night. Others reveal dim interiors, where small fires are being stirred awake. The air carries a mix of scents: wood smoke, damp timber, a faint trace of bread from somewhere nearby. A shopkeeper lifts a wooden bar from a door and sets it aside. The motion is unhurried. A bucket is poured out into the gutter with a soft rush of water. Then, the street returns to calm. You continue toward a slightly wider street where the city feels more open. Here, carts will pass later, and people will gather to trade and talk. But in this early hour, it is still gentle. A horse stands near a post, head lowered, breathing slow. Its harness hangs quiet, leather dark and worn. You pause near a stall where someone is arranging goods on a simple table, cloth folded neatly, small items set in rows. There is no calling out yet, no need to attract attention. The morning has not reached that part of itself. You exchange a few quiet words, then move on, your steps slow and steady. As you walk, you notice the way the city sounds begin to change. A distant hammer tap, then silence. The soft roll of a cartwheel far away. A brief laugh, quickly swallowed by the air. New York is waking, but it is still careful, still modest in its noise. You pass a doorway where the smell of stew or broth drifts out warm and inviting. You pass another where the scent of fresh-cut wood clings to the air, sharp and clean. Each smell feels like a small piece of the city, each sound like a small thread in its morning fabric. You reach a place where you can see the harbor again between buildings. The masts stand like dark lines against the bright sky, and the water catches sunlight in small, moving pieces. The city is built around this water, shaped by it, fed by it. You turn back toward your home with the calm satisfaction of having stepped into the morning. The day is now fully formed but still unhurried, and you carry that same quiet pace with you as the hours begin to widen toward midday. As the morning settles further into itself, the city seems to find a steady breath. The earlier hush has softened, not disappeared, but changed into a low, constant presence. You move through it without resistance, letting the rhythm of the streets guide your steps. You pass a small courtyard tucked between buildings, where sunlight reaches the ground more fully. A barrel stands there, catching rainwater, its surface dark and smooth. A pigeon hops along the edge, pecking once, then lifting its head to watch the world with quiet curiosity. The sound of its wings is brief as it flutters away, and the courtyard returns to stillness. Near the edge of a narrow street, a woman shakes out a length of cloth, hanging it carefully from a line stretched between two windows. The fabric moves gently in the air, then settles. Above, someone opens a window just wide enough to let fresh air inside. The wood creaks softly, then holds. You continue toward a small square where a few people have gathered, not in a crowd, but in loose, calm arrangement. A cart has arrived, its wheels leaving faint lines in the dirt. Crates are set down slowly, one at a time. There is no rush to unload. The day is long and everyone knows it. You stop for a moment and rest your hand on the edge of a wooden post. The wood feels warm now, holding the sun. You listen. Footsteps pass nearby. A voice speaks quietly, then lowers further. Somewhere, a bell rings once, distant and muted, then falls silent again. The smells of the city mingle here. Fresh produce, leather, wood. A hint of fish carried up from the docks. Each scent drifts through and fades, replaced by another. Never overwhelming, always brief. When you begin walking again, you take a different street, one that leads back toward home by a slower route. This path winds between older buildings, their walls uneven, their windows small. The street feels protected, almost enclosed, like a quiet corridor within the city. By the time you reach your door, the morning feels complete. The fire inside has kept the room warm. The light has shifted again, stronger and steadier now. You step inside and close the door gently behind you. The city continues beyond the walls, but here, in this modest space, the calm holds. You take a seat for a moment, letting your body rest, knowing that the hours ahead will move at the same gentle pace, unfolding without hurry as New York carries on around you. You sit near the small window and watch the light outside, noticing how it changes the color of the street. In the early hours, everything felt gray and cool. Now the sun has warmed the stone and wood, and the lane below holds a softer tone, like the city has relaxed into the day. The room is quiet. The hearth has lowered to embers again, but it still gives off a steady warmth. You add one small piece of wood, not to make a bright fire, only to keep the room comfortable. It catches slowly, and the faint crackle feels like a gentle companion. A simple task waits for you, something small and ordinary. You take a cloth and a bit of wax and begin to rub it into a worn wooden handle, restoring its smoothness. The motion is slow and repetitive, soothing. The scent of the wax is faint, and the wood looks slightly richer as you work. Outside, the city continues its quiet movement. A cart passes at a distance, wheels rolling softly. A horse snorts once, then settles. Voices drift for a moment from somewhere farther down the street, low and indistinct, then fade away. When you finish, you set the tool aside and stretch your fingers gently. You rise and tidy the room without thought. A bowl returned to the shelf. A cloth folded and hung back. A small pile of kindling arranged neatly near the hearth. The late morning approaches, and you begin to prepare a modest meal for midday. Water warms in a pot. A bit of bread is set out. Perhaps something simple is added, a small portion of preserved food. Nothing fancy, only steady nourishment. You eat slowly, seated at the table, letting each bite be unhurried. Between bites, you pause and listen to the city's soft hum outside. It is still not loud, but it is present, a gentle reminder that life continues beyond your walls. When the meal is finished, you wash the bowl and set it aside. The day feels open now, wide and generous. The afternoon will arrive in its own time, and you move toward it calmly, ready for the slower hours ahead. The afternoon settles in softly, as if the city has decided to speak more quietly again. The sun remains bright, but its light feels gentler now, warmer around the edges. Shadows on the street shorten and gather close to doorways and barrels, resting there like patient companions. You return home and step inside, letting the cooler air of the room meet you. The hearth is low, embers steady. The house feels calm, almost still, even while the city continues outside. You set a small bundle down on the table and take a moment to stand with your hands resting lightly on the wood, feeling its smooth, worn surface. There is time now for slow tasks, the kind that do not demand urgency. You take a basin and pour in water. You rinse a few vegetables or simple ingredients you've kept, letting the water run over them quietly. The sound is soft, and the coolness of the water feels soothing on your hands. Near the window, you sit with a small piece of mending, a seam that is loosened, a button that needs tightening. You thread the needle carefully, the thread sliding through with a faint pull. The cloth rests in your lap, and your hands move slowly in and out, a rhythm steady enough to quiet the mind. Outside, the street sounds drift in without force. A cartwheel rolls past, then fades. A distant voice calls out briefly, then lowers again. Somewhere a door closes softly. The city never becomes silent, but it can become gentle, and in these afternoon hours, it feels exactly that. When the stitch is finished, you tie it off neatly and smooth the cloth with your palm. The simple satisfaction of making something whole again settles in your chest, calm and warm. You rise and empty the basin outside into the gutter, the water spilling with a brief rush before it disappears. The light outside is steady, and the air carries the faint scent of harbor salt, mixed with cooking smoke from nearby homes. You stand a moment in the doorway, watching the street and feeling the slow pace of the day. Afternoon feels spacious here, even in a growing city. It holds room for quiet work, for pauses, for breathing. And so, you move onward, gently, letting time stretch and soften as the day continues. You take a slow walk again, not because you must go anywhere, but because the city reveals itself best when you move through it without hurry. New York in the 1700s is close-built and narrow in places, yet it still offers small pockets of calm if you look for them. You pass a shaded alley where the sunlight barely reaches the ground. The air there is cooler, carrying the smell of damp stone and old wood. A small puddle reflects a sliver of sky. A cat moves along the edge, quiet as smoke, then disappears behind a barrel. Turning a corner, you find a slightly wider street where the light falls more openly. A few people stand near a cart, speaking in low voices. Their hands move calmly as they lift and set down goods. No one gestures widely. No one calls out sharply. The work is steady, practiced, quiet. You pause near a post and simply watch. A horse shifts its weight, harnessed leather creaking softly. A wheel turns slightly as the cart is adjusted. A bundle of cloth is lifted and folded neatly. Everything is done with care, as if care itself keeps the day smooth. The smell of baking drifts from somewhere nearby, warm and faint. It mixes with the familiar scents of the city. Wood smoke, damp rope, and the ever-present touch of salt carried from the harbor. You breathe it in slowly, letting it become part of the calm. As you walk back toward home, the afternoon light begins to soften. The sun is still high, but the edges of shadows look less sharp. The city feels like it is settling, preparing for the quieter hours ahead. You return indoors and tend the hearth lightly. The embers glow, and you add a small piece of wood, letting it catch gently. The room warms again, and the firelight makes the walls feel softer, less rigid. You begin preparing for the evening meal, not with urgency, but with the quiet sense of timing that comes from routine. Water is set to warm. Simple ingredients are gathered. A knife moves slowly on a wooden board, its sound steady and soft. Outside, the city continues. Footsteps pass now and then. A distant laugh rises briefly, then fades. But inside, your space remains calm, held together by small, familiar actions and the steady warmth of the fire. The afternoon drifts onward, and evening begins to appear at its edges, slow and gentle, ready to carry you toward night. The pot warms slowly near the hearth, and the first faint steam begins to rise. It curls upward in thin strands, then disappears into the dimmer air near the ceiling. The smell that follows is plain and comforting, the kind of smell that belongs to simple kitchens and steady lives. You stir with a wooden spoon, the sound soft against the pot. The motion is slow and circular, almost hypnotic. When you stop, the room returns to stillness, broken only by the quiet crackle of the fire. Outside, the light has changed again. The sun begins to lower, and the city's streets shift from bright to warm. Through the window, you can see shadows lengthening along the lane, stretching toward doorways and barrels. The harbor air cools slightly, and the scent of salt becomes sharper, cleaner. You step outside for a moment and let the evening air touch your face. The street is not empty, but it has slowed. People move with less urgency. A cart rolls past at a gentler pace. Voices are lower now, softened by tiredness and the natural quiet of dusk. Somewhere down near the waterfront, You hear the faint creak of a mast rope and the soft slap of water against wood. The harbor continues its work even as the day begins to fold itself toward night. You return indoors. The warmth of the hearth feels welcoming. You set out a bowl and a tin cup, placing them on the table with quiet hands. When the food is ready, you ladle it slowly, watching steam rise in the firelight. You eat without hurry. Each bite is warm and steady. Between bites, you pause and listen to the sounds of the house and the city beyond it, the faint crackle of embers, a distant footstep, the quiet settling of wood. When you finish, you clean the bowl and pot gently, rinsing them in a basin. The water's cooler now, and it feels refreshing on your hands. You set everything aside, neat and ready for tomorrow. Evening has arrived fully. The room is dimmer, and the firelight begins to matter more than daylight. You sit near the hearth for a while, letting the warmth reach your feet, letting the calm of the day settle deeper. The city is still there outside, but its noise has softened. Night is approaching, slow and steady, and you move with it, ready to let the world grow quiet. The sky outside deepens gradually, shifting from warm gold to a muted blue, then toward gray. The change is so slow it feels almost imagined, as if evening is arriving carefully, not wanting to disturb the calm that has settled over the city. You light a small oil lamp inside. The flame catches with a soft glow, and the room changes at once. Corners darken. Shadows grow longer and gentler. The table, the walls, the familiar objects around you take on a warmer, quieter presence under the amber light. You sit near the hearth, where the embers still hold a low glow. The fire does not need much attention now. It is content to rest, offering warmth without asking anything in return. You add a single small piece of wood, just enough to keep the heat steady through the evening. Outside, the city begins to settle into night. Footsteps become fewer. A voice calls once, distant and low, then silence fills the space again. Somewhere along the street, a shutter closes. The sound is brief and final, like a soft punctuation to the day. You wash your hands at the basin, the water cool and clean. The simple act feels grounding, as if it gently washes the remaining movement of the day from your body. You dry your hands and hang the cloth back in its place. Returning to your chair, you sit quietly and listen. The harbor sounds drift faintly through the narrow streets now. The gentle movement of water, the occasional creak of wood, a gull's call, softer than before, then gone. Your body begins to feel pleasantly heavy, not tired in a sharp way, but settled. Shoulders lower. Breathing deepens. The day's small routines and steady moments gather together and fade without effort. Night has arrived in New York City, and it brings with it a calm that feels earned. The city rests, and within your modest home, you rest with it, letting the quiet hold you gently as the hours move slowly towards sleep. The lamp flame holds steady, small and patient, and the room feels wrapped in warmth. Outside, darkness thickens between the buildings, turning the narrow lane into a quiet corridor of shadow. The sky is barely visible now, only a thin strip above the rooftops, deepening toward night. You rise and move through the room with slow care, the way you do when the day is ending and everything should be left settled. The door is checked and latched, not from fear, but from habit. The wood slides into place with a soft sound, and the home feels complete again, gently closed against the cool air outside. At the hearth, the embers glow faintly. You lean in and adjust them slightly, pushing a small piece of wood closer so it will burn slowly and evenly. The fire answers with a tiny flare, then settles again into a low red pulse. You stand for a moment and listen. The city has grown quieter, but it is not silent. Somewhere beyond the walls, far enough that it feels distant, you hear a cartwheel rolling slowly, then stopping. A soft murmur of voices, the sound of water against the docks, faint and steady. Then, again, quiet. You wash your face and hands once more, letting the cool water smooth away the last dust and warmth of the day. The cloth you dry with feels rough but clean. and the small ritual settles your thoughts. The lamp is turned lower. Its light becomes softer, more intimate. Shadows deepen and the room feels smaller in the best way, like a sheltered place meant only for rest. You sit again, close to the hearth, and let your eyes rest. Breathing slows, muscles loosen. The day's movements, the walking through streets, the quiet work, the slow meals, all fade into a gentle tiredness that feels safe. Outside, the harbor air cools further. The smell of salt remains, faint but present, mixing with the scent of smoke inside. New York City, still young and growing, rests under the wide night. You rise at last and move toward the bed. The blanket is thick and familiar, waiting to cover you. You sit on the edge, then lie down slowly, letting your body sink into the mattress. Rest is close now, not as an ending, but as a quiet return. You pull the blanket up over your body and let it settle, heavy and comforting. The fabric is wool, warm and slightly coarse, but familiar enough that your skin accepts it without thought. The mattress gives gently beneath you, shaped by many nights, holding you in the same places it always has. For a moment, you remain still, listening. The oil lamp is turned low, its flame small and steady. It casts a soft amber glow that barely reaches the corners of the room. The hearth offers a faint red pulse from the embers, just enough to paint the stones with a quiet warmth. Outside, the city has grown hushed, and the narrow street holds only occasional sounds that drift in and fade away. You reach and blow out the lamp. Darkness fills the room at once, but it does not feel empty. It feels full of calm. The embers remain faintly visible, like the last gentle heartbeat of the day. Through the window, a thin stripe of moonlight slips in, pale and still, resting across a portion of the floorboards. Your breathing deepens. The blanket rises and falls slowly with your chest. The air's cool near the window and warmer near the hearth, creating a gentle balance that feels soothing. Outside, you can still hear the harbor in the distance, not loud, only present. A soft slap of water against wood, a rope shifting faintly, then quiet again. Somewhere far off, a gull calls once, low and distant, then disappears into the night. Your thoughts begin to slow. The details of the day soften and drift away, like the last light leaving the sky. The street, the docks, the quiet errands, the steady work, all fold themselves neatly into memory, without any sharp edges. Your body grows heavier, relaxed. Shoulders loosen, hands rest open. The city outside continues to exist, but it no longer feels close. It feels far away, softened by darkness and sleep. And slowly, gently, the night begins to carry you deeper, toward rest that asks for nothing but stillness. Sleep arrives gradually, like a tide that does not rush the shore. It comes in quiet stages, each one softer than the last, until wakefulness feels distant and light, no longer holding you with any strength. Your breathing becomes even slower, settling into a steady rhythm that feels natural and unforced. The blanket's weight presses gently, reassuringly, and the mattress holds you in a calm cradle of stillness. The room remains dark, but it is not the kind of darkness that feels empty. It is the kind that feels protective, like a closed door against the wind. The last embers in the hearth continue to fade. Their glow grows dimmer and dimmer until it is only a suggestion of red, barely visible. The stones around the hearth hold a faint warmth, a quiet memory of fire that will linger for a while longer before the night cools everything fully. Outside, the city rests. The narrow street beyond your window holds fewer sounds now. Footsteps have stopped. Doors are closed. The occasional distant creak of wood from the docks reaches you only rarely, softened by distance and by the thick quiet of night. The harbor itself continues its gentle movement. Water shifts against pilings with a slow, repetitive sound like breathing. A rope creaks faintly. A ship settles in its mooring. These sounds do not disturb. They are steady, predictable, soothing. Your thoughts drift, becoming less clear, less attached to anything. If dreams begin, they are slow and indistinct, more like feelings than images. A sense of warm light on wood, the smell of salt in the air, the sound of a quiet street waking in the morning. They pass through gently and dissolve. Time stretches wider here. There's no sense of minutes, no sense of hours, only the deep calm of being held by night. Your body loosens completely, all small tensions released. Your face softens, hands relax. You sink deeper into sleep, and the city outside sinks deeper into its own quiet rest. The night moves on in a slow, unbroken stream. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing pulls at it. The darkness remains deep between the buildings, and the city feels as though it has folded itself inward, resting quietly under the wide sky beyond the rooftops. Inside, your room stays still. The air cools slightly as the last warmth from the hearth begins to fade. The blanket keeps you comfortable, holding heat close to your body. Your breathing remains steady, gentle, and even, the simplest sound in the space. From time to time, the house makes a quiet settling noise, a soft creak in a beam, a faint shift in the wooden floor as it responds to the changing temperature. These sounds are small and familiar, not sharp enough to disturb, only reminders that the home is alive in its own quiet way. Outside, the harbor continues to breathe. Water laps gently against wood. A ship's rigging gives a faint sound, then quiet returns. The city's night is not silent, but it is softened, like everything has been wrapped in cloth. Your sleep deepens. If you turn in the night, it happens slowly, naturally. The blanket shifts, then settles again, finding its place over you without effort. The mattress holds you with the same gentle firmness, shaped by countless nights. Dreams, if they come, remain calm. They do not rush or demand. They drift like mist through a narrow street, forming briefly, then dissolving. No sharp edges, no urgency, only slow impressions. Lamplight on wood, the smell of salt air, the quiet creak of a pier underfoot. Time continues to pass without being counted. The night remains patient. Your sleep remains deep and steady, and the city rests around you, held together by darkness and quiet. At the deepest part of the night, the city feels almost motionless. The harbor is still there, of course, but even its sound seems softer now, as if the water itself has lowered its voice. The narrow streets lie empty, held in shadow, and the buildings stand close together like quiet sentinels. Inside, the room is dark and calm. The blanket rests heavy over you, steady and reassuring. Your breathing continues in that slow, even rhythm, and it feels as though the whole house has matched itself to it, settling into the same gentle pace. The air near the window is cooler, clean and faintly damp, carrying a trace of salt that slips in through tiny gaps in the frame. The air near the hearth is slightly warmer, a last lingering softness held in the stones. Between these two, the room feels balanced, comfortable, still. Outside, a single distant sound floats through the night. Perhaps the faint call of a night bird. Perhaps the soft creak of wood along the docks. It comes and goes without pulling you toward waking. It simply passes, then leaves the quiet behind it. Your sleep remains unbroken. The mind is quiet now, thoughts no longer forming clearly. There's only the deep sense of rest, the gentle weight of the blanket, the familiar stillness of the room. Time flows on, smooth and unnoticed, as the night holds steady, keeping everything calm and quiet while you sleep. Very slowly, almost without any clear sign, the night begins to loosen its grip on the city. Darkness still fills the narrow streets and presses gently against the buildings, but its texture changes. It feels lighter, thinner, as if morning is waiting just beyond it. You remain asleep, undisturbed. Your breathing stays calm and even, slow and deep. The blanket rests where it settled hours ago, its weight steady and familiar. Nothing calls you back to waking yet. Outside, the sky above the rooftops shifts from deep black to a dark, quiet blue. The change is subtle, nearly invisible, but it carries a sense of movement, of time continuing its gentle course. Stars begin to fade, not disappearing all at once, but retreating one by one. The harbor responds first. The water takes on a faint hint of reflection, barely there. A soft ripple moves across its surface as a boat shifts in its mooring. The sound is low and distant, blending easily into the early quiet. Within the house, the wood adjusts again, a soft creak as the air cools and then steadies. The sound is brief and familiar, not enough to stir you. It becomes part of the background, part of the night's slow breathing. Your sleep deepens further if that is possible. Dreams, if they pass through, are gentle and without shape. A sense of warmth, a memory of lamplight, the feeling of moving slowly through a quiet street. They drift by and dissolve without leaving weight behind. The city holds its stillness. Streets remain empty. Doors stay closed. New York waits, patient and calm, as the first quiet signs of morning begin to gather far above, while you continue to rest, untouched by the changing sky. The first true hint of morning arrives as sound, faint and careful, slipping over the rooftops before the light has fully found its way down into the streets. Somewhere near the harbor, a gull calls once. It is not loud, only clear, and it hangs in the cool air for a moment before fading away. After it, there is a pause of silence, wide and gentle, as if the city is listening. Inside, you sleep on. Your breathing remains slow and steady. The blanket rises and falls softly with your chest. The room is still dark, but the darkness has begun to soften at the edges, especially near the window, where the air feels cooler and cleaner. Outside, the sky continues to lighten. The deep blue becomes slightly paler near the horizon, and a thin wash of early dawn begins to form, far above the crowded rooftops. The streets below remain shadowed, but the tops of buildings begin to catch the faintest hint of light. A second bird answers the first call, then another. The sounds are spaced far apart, leaving long stretches of quiet between them. It feels as though morning is arriving on careful feet, unwilling to disturb anyone still resting. The harbor shifts subtly. Wood creaks softly as ships settle. Water laps against pilings with a slow, gentle rhythm. The smell of salt becomes clearer in the cooler air, drifting through the narrow streets. Inside the house, the wooden beams make a quiet, settling sound as temperature changes. It is small and familiar, blending into the stillness. You turn slightly in your sleep, and the blanket adjusts, then settles again, keeping its steady weight. The window begins to hold a faint suggestion of light. Not bright yet, only a soft gray that replaces the deepest black. The room remains calm, safe, undisturbed. Morning continues to gather outside, quietly forming itself over New York City, while you remain asleep, held gently in the last peaceful hours of night. Your eyes open slowly, not pulled awake by sound or urgency, but guided gently by the light that now fills the room. At first, you remain still, letting the quiet settle around you once more. The ceiling above is dim but visible, its wooden beams dark against the soft gray of early morning. You listen. The city is awake now, but only just. Somewhere beyond the walls, a cartwheel rolls slowly over stone, then fades. A voice speaks in low tones, then softens. From the direction of the harbor comes the familiar, distant sound of water moving against wood, steady and calm. You sit up gradually, the blanket sliding down to rest in your lap. Cool air touches your face, refreshing after the warmth of sleep. You stretch slowly, shoulders lifting, arms extending without strain, letting the last weight of the night leave your body. Your feet find the floor, and the boards answer with a gentle creak as you stand. The room feels peaceful and familiar, unchanged by the passing hours. The hearth holds only cold ash now, pale and quiet, waiting patiently to be stirred awake again. You kneel and brush the ash aside, careful and unhurried. Beneath it, you find what you expected, A faint ember, small but alive, glowing softly like a hidden breath. You smile without thinking and arrange kindling around it, placing each piece where it will catch easily. A spark follows, then another. The ember brightens. A flame appears, thin at first, then steadier. The fire begins to wake, offering its warmth back to the room as if it never truly left. You stand and feel the heat reach your hands. The day has begun again, quietly and completely, and New York in the 1700s prepares to take its first careful steps forward. Light begins to gather more clearly now, slipping down from the sky and finding its way between rooftops and chimneys. It does not rush. It settles slowly, touching the upper edges of buildings first, then easing its way downward toward the narrow streets. Inside the room, the darkness thins. Shapes become easier to sense even with closed eyes. The outline of the table, the line of the wall, the quiet presence of the hearth. You remain asleep, but your breathing changes just slightly, growing lighter, as if your body is beginning to follow the day back toward waking. Outside, the city stirs almost imperceptibly. A door opens somewhere nearby, then closes again. Footsteps pass once, soft and unhurried. The harbor answers with a low sound of water shifting against wood, steady and familiar. A pale stripe of dawn slips through the window and rests across the floorboards. It reveals the grain of the wood, the small marks left by years of use. Dust floats gently in the air, catching the light for a moment before drifting out of sight. You turn your head slightly on the pillow. The blanket moves with you, then settles back into place, its weight still comforting. Your hand slides across the fabric without thought, fingers brushing the familiar texture. The air in the room feels cooler now, refreshed by the approaching morning. The faint scent of salt from the harbor mixes with the smell of wood and old smoke, creating a quiet, grounding presence. Outside, birds grow a little more confident. Their calls overlap gently, forming a loose pattern that fills the spaces left by night. The sounds are calm, unsharp, never demanding. The city is waking slowly and carefully, and your body follows that same rhythm. Sleep loosens its hold, not all at once, but gradually, allowing awareness to return without effort. The day waits just beyond the edge of rest, steady and unhurried, ready to begin again. The fire grows into a gentle, steady flame, bright enough to warm the room, but not fierce. It flickers softly against the hearthstones, and the light it casts makes the shadows move in slow, calming patterns along the walls. You set the iron kettle near the heat and listen as the metal warms, silent at first, then faintly alive with the smallest changes. You move through morning motions that feel as natural as breathing. You straighten the blanket, smoothing it once with your palm. You fold it back neatly. You dress in simple layers, each piece settling against you with familiar weight. At the window, you pause and look out. The narrow street below is brighter now. Light has reached it fully, turning damp stone a soft, warm color. More doors stand open. A person passes with a bucket, walking steadily. Farther off, a cart moves slowly, its wheels making a gentle sound that fades as it turns a corner. The harbor air drifts in faintly, carrying salt and the smell of wood, rope, and tar. You can almost sense the water beyond the buildings, moving quietly as ships settle in their moorings. The kettle begins to whisper. You prepare a warm drink and sit at the table with the cup between your hands. The warmth spreads into your palms, then into your chest. You take slow sips, letting the calm of the morning settle in you. Outside, New York continues to wake. Not in a rush, not in noise, but in small, steady signs. Footsteps, doors, the low creak of wood, the soft movement of work beginning. The day has returned to its starting point, and you meet it gently, as if the city and you are breathing together, slow and steady, ready to move through another quiet cycle of time. When you finish the drink, you rinse the cup and set it aside. The simple sound of tin touching wood is soft and clean, like a small closing. You remain seated for a moment longer. watching the fire settle and listening to the city's early rhythm outside. The morning light grows warmer. It reaches farther into the room now, turning the tabletop honey-colored and softening the grain of the wood. Dust floats lazily through the sunbeam near the window, slow and weightless, as if even the air is moving gently today. Outside, the street continues its quiet awakening. A broom sweeps somewhere nearby, the faint rasp of straw against stone. A door closes softly. A low voice speaks, then falls silent. The harbor continues its distant breathing, water and wood, salt and rope. You rise and step to the doorway, letting the cooler air touch your face. The lane looks calm, familiar, and steady. Buildings stand close together, their surfaces weathered, their windows small. Above them, the sky is pale and open in narrow strips, promising a clear day. For a moment, you simply stand there, held in the quiet balance between home and city. The day feels complete already, not because nothing will happen, but because everything that happens will be ordinary, slow, and steady. You step back inside and let the door rest nearly closed, leaving only a small space for fresh air to drift through. The fire remains gentle. The room remains warm. Your body feels calm. The hours stretch ahead like a long, quiet road, and your mind relaxes at the thought of how slowly time can move when nothing forces it forward. And as the day continues to unfold with the same measured pace, the feeling of rest returns softly, as if night is never too far away, always waiting patiently at the edge of the world. The light outside begins to soften again, not suddenly, but in the slow way it always does when a day has been gently lived. In the city, shadows lengthen between buildings, stretching across stone and packed earth, gathering in doorways and along the edges of barrels like quiet pools of darkness. Inside, the hearth has settled low. You add a small piece of wood, just enough to wake the embers into a mild glow. The flame catches slowly, then steadies, and the firelight makes the room feel warmer, kinder, as though it is preparing the space for rest. You wash your hands in cool water and dry them carefully. The simple ritual feels calming, like closing a book without making a sound. You set everything back where it belongs. The table is clear. The cup is put away. The room feels orderly and quiet. Outside, the city's sounds thin. Footsteps become fewer. Voices fade. Somewhere down near the harbor, you hear the faint creak of a ship's rigging, then the soft slap of water against wood. The night air carries salt more sharply now, cool and clean. You light the oil lamp briefly, letting its amber glow fill the room. Shadows deepen in the corners. The familiar objects around you become softer shapes. You sit near the hearth and let your breathing slow. New York City in the 1700s rests differently than the countryside. It is close built, surrounded by wood and stone and water, yet at night it still finds quiet. The streets darken. The harbor settles. The whole restful weight of the city seems to sink gently into the ground. You turn the lamp lower, then blow it out. Darkness fills the room at once, but it feels safe. The blanket waits, thick and familiar. You lie down and let it cover you, its weight steady and reassuring. Outside, the night continues. Water moves softly. A distant gull calls once, then silence returns. Your thoughts slow, then soften, then fade, like lamplight disappearing from a window. And as sleep gathers around you, the city becomes distant. The harbor becomes a quiet breath, and your mind slips gently into rest, held by darkness, warmth, and the calm rhythm of a day that has come full circle.